Welcome to the ALTIS podcast. I am your host, Stu McMillan. In this series, I'm engaging with some of the speakers and the contributors to the just passed ALTIS Speed Summit presented by 3x4 Genetics. We had the Speed Summit June 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was amazing. We're going to continue putting these podcasts together with some of the speakers and the contributors that we haven't yet spoken to. We did film everything, so we're going to put together a little package and present it out at some point over the next few weeks. Massive thank you to all of our sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, Team Builder, and Output Sports for making the event possible. Stay tuned. It will be coming out soon, the video production of the event. Today's guest is the amazing David Joyce. Met Dave a few times at this point. Contributed to his last book, or the second version of his great book that he put together with Dan Lewington. I'll link to that in the show notes at some point. But this is a great conversation. It really is. I'm obviously filming this and talking about this conversation just after I've had it. And I really, really enjoy talking to Dave. Every time I get together with him, I really enjoy it. I learn a ton. He's super wise. He's been doing this for a long time. I know you guys are going to enjoy it. I began, as always, by asking, what does he do and why does he do it?
So what do? I coach. So funnily enough, I was thinking about this when I was coming back from the States on Saturday, because you've got to fill in the immigration card as you come into Australia, and it says occupation.
Hmm.
And I think if you were to have a look at my CV or LinkedIn profile or whatever, you could pick out a number of different things. But inherently, what I do is I coach. And I always have been. I view that through the lens of being a dad, professionally as well. That's what I've always done. So I coach. And why do I do it? So I do it for probably a few reasons, I reckon. One is because it animates me. And I think, we can always talk about an altruistic thing. Oh, it makes, yeah, I like seeing other people succeed, which of course is true. Um, we're getting way off piste early, Stu. But um, I don't know that I actually I don't know if I believe in true altruism. I think what I think is we do things because it makes us feel better, and it makes the chemicals in our head optimized. And of all the things that I've done, uh, coaching is the thing which makes me feel the best. So that's why I do it.
I agree with you. I think if you ask why enough times, you're eventually going to get to a pretty selfish reason.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look,
Because it
if
makes me feel good.
yeah, well, if it didn't make us feel good to help little old ladies cross the road or to give money to charity, I suspect we wouldn't do it. So there is like an evolutionary coding for us, and what makes us feel better is going to vary between people. I've just happened upon coaching as the thing which makes me feel the best.
What is a coach to you?
A coach is someone who helps another person, um, often an athlete, but not always, because much of my coaching is outside of sport, reveal the greatness in themselves. So I used to think that my purpose, in inverted commas, was to help other people be great. And I recognize that that's actually totally arrogant. Um, my job is just to help them reveal their inner best, there's that story. It's probably apocryphal, but there's that story about um, someone asking Michelangelo, "Oh, how did you sculpt David?" No relation. And he reportedly said, "Oh, it's easy. You just got to chip away at the things that are not David." And I guess so many of us get in our own way, myself included. And my job as that external sort of person is to help that people get out of their own way. And sometimes that's explicit instruction, like do it like this. But the more senior the person, it's more about asking questions. And I think that the really great coaches, of course, which you're one of them, of course, are that like facilitatory,
Mhm.
um, and providing that external lens,
Mhm.
um, making sure that they're not derailing themselves and having the best ways of making the best decisions for themselves.
I always cringe a little bit when I see Instagram profiles or come across companies and coaches and say, we X athletes, like we build athletes, or we
Mm,
build great athletes, or we produce, or whatever, you know what I mean? And at this point in my career, and basically what you've said at this point of your career, we kind of know that that's not the role. We're just
yeah,
that's not what we do. We don't build athletes. We, as you said, we kind of facilitate or help to reveal the
yeah.
great athletes in themselves. And when I cringe about that, and then I think about my first company that I started in 1994 with my friend Nick Ward, and it
Yep.
was called BOA. Can you think of what BOA may stand for?
Um, Building something athletes.
Builders of athletes.
Builders of athletes.
So I think it's a process we all go through, right? Like it's
Yeah.
young, all right, this is all about me, and we're gonna build the greatest athletes. We're gonna optimize this and blah blah blah, and then eventually you figure out, and okay, it's not really about that. It's
Well, yeah. So I think that leans on this notion of it being a job for carpenters, and carpenters is the base science of carpentry is physics, whereas actually, there's an element of that. Don't get me wrong, there's an element of that. But actually, what we do is more akin to being gardeners, which is biology.
oh, I like
Um,
it.
and really, what you're trying to do is facilitate that garden. But look, I totally get it because it's building athletes is so much more marketable, well, it's more easily marketable, So I don't begrudge people doing it. I get why people do it. It's just not my approach, and I just sort of not aligned to my way of thinking about life, not just coaching.
Is it something that you do now in your role as, because you do a lot of coach education at this point in your career as well?
Yeah.
Um, is that something that you think about when you're educating younger coaches about
Oh,
how they
yeah.
should be looking at the role?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. But the approach to coaching, and if you're trying to get the best out of someone, your approach to coaching for a junior coach is going to be different to a more senior coach.
Mhm.
Um, so there might be a little bit more education or instruction or advisory for the younger coaches because they still need to build up their bank of knowledge,
Mm.
So I think about things through like four lenses: the knowledge, capabilities, personal qualities, and experiences.
Mhm.
And all of us have got strengths in parts of them and maybe room for improvement in others. The younger the coach, the more it is to be gained by experiences and knowledge, I reckon. Um,
So you said knowledge,
Not
capability.
knowledge, so what we know, capabilities, which is what we can do.
Yeah.
So it might be knowledge of physiology or
Yeah.
knowledge of football tactics or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Capabilities is what you can do with that knowledge. Like, are you capable of having challenging conversations? Are you capable of doing of asking probing questions and getting a response? Are you capable of holding court in a team meeting? Experiences, which is have not just how long have you been in the game, but what have you experienced? Like, have you experienced a road trip to deepest darkest Tajikistan? Have you been involved when you're challenging for the title and you've got that pressure, or challenging at the bottom end of the table where relegation is staring you in the face? So, having looking through that experience lens with a bit of nuance, I think is important. And then personal qualities, which is things like it's all sorts of things, but it could be um, equanimity, like composure under pressure. It can be ability to remain optimistic and positive. Um, you know, emotional regulation, those sorts of things. And we've all got growth areas in all of them. Um, but what I see is that those coaches at the younger end, you'll get greater gains quickly by really work on the knowledge. But the master coaches, the the knowledge bit, there'll still be some gains there, but it might be marginal, you know.
Mm, mm.
How do you think about it with the coach education stuff that you do?
Probably similarly. I mean, I asked for you to repeat that because yeah, that's really interesting. Um, I feel, when you're trying to communicate or share different things, you have to try to find a model, which
Yeah,
you've done here, right? You've got four words, and you can then scale it and share it and talking about it and bucket things and categorize things. And typically, I've just stolen other people's interesting models. So I use the Russell Ackoff DIKW one. So
yeah,
data, information, knowledge, and wisdom.
yeah,
And we typically go through that type of growth through our own careers, right? We
yeah,
start with we just picking up pieces of information, not even information really, just this and that and this and that. And we don't really understand it. It's just data.
yeah,
And then when we can figure out a little bit more about it, it becomes a little bit more informative. Like it informs our work to some extent. But it doesn't become knowledgeable for us until we actually understand it in context. And for
yeah,
that, we need to have, in your sense, experiences. So knowledge in yours is you've taken data and information and kind of pushed it together. And experiences and capabilities is kind of your knowledge piece. And then your personal qualities, that's probably the wisdom, right? So it's kind of the same thing with just some slightly different words.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my own excuse me, my own kind of journey was, similar. I think all of our journeys are, right? We start off just being quite selfish. We try to learn as much as we can because it serves us as individuals to try to be as good as we possibly can at this thing that we want to do.
yeah,
To do that, we need to pick up as much information about this thing as we possibly can. So whatever that means, whether that's reading books or talking to people, going to presentations and blah, 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 reading research and doing research, experimenting.
hmm,
So we did, that was kind of the first part of, I think most coaches' careers. It's not necessarily about coaching. It's about like getting more information so you
yeah,
actually can coach. And I think
yes,
the second part of the career is about now coaching, right? Now it's applying all of these things that you have, all of this data, all of this information, and applying it in a way that you can build these experiences and this knowledge base. And then third part of my career has been now, okay, can I take these learnings from these 20 or 30 years of my career so far, my journey, and share it with others?
yeah,
So that's the wisdom part for me, like,
yeah,
okay, so I've got all of this knowledge and, now it's it's for me, I see part of my role now and a big part of my role and why we exist as a company, why we do things like the Speed Summit is to share all that.
yeah.
I feel 100%, I feel like that's where you're at. Maybe you actually probably got there a lot earlier in your coaching journey than I did, in fact.
Yeah, so I probably see it slightly differently, but what I was going to say was we've seen the evolution in how we coach coaches now, which was previously very didactic, all coaches assembling at an airport hotel, and there's going to be someone up the front and giving 4 hours of content. Whereas it's much more facilitatory, it's that social construction of knowledge.
Mm.
Um, and I think the big change has been moving from a teacher-centric model, which is I've got the wisdom that I'm going to impart to you, um, more to a learner-centric model is, how do we make the most of your learning? And it seems like semantics, but it is really quite different.
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess just to round out what I said about seeing it slightly differently, I've under no illusions about the fact that I haven't arrived. I don't think you ever arrive. In fact, I'm probably more curious now than I've ever been, because I think one of the things that having a few grey hairs does give you is a greater sense of humility, that you're nowhere close to understanding everything. Um, and I think that's probably been the big shift in me. So yeah, I take a step forward thinking that I've got some wisdom, and then I actually take two steps back.
Yeah, I think this. Yeah, I don't want to. I know I shared it this way, where it's a continuum and a hierarchy, and this is about this, and then this is about this, and then this is about that. It's about all things all the time, isn't it? It's very dynamic, and
Yeah,
I feel you there. I feel more curious about what I do now, and still learning things like that initial stuff that I was working on in the first 5 years of my career.
yeah,
More curious about picking up more information now than I've ever been.
yeah,
But I'm also, it's both and. I'm also interested now a lot in sharing that journey,
of course.
sharing my learnings, and as you are, and as many of our colleagues.
Are you finding that the sort of things you're curious about have changed, or are you just curious about the same things but just in a different way?
Oh no, they change. Yeah, they change almost weekly. Yeah. Oh yeah, almost weekly. I'm the very definition of, I learn as much as I possibly can about a thing until I'm bored, and then I'm on to the next one.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And I get bored pretty quickly. Like it's and then the job is just synthesis. And
yeah,
that's what we all struggle with, right? I feel like we get better at that as we age as well, right? We just become better synthesizers,
yeah,
better
yeah, I agree.
better editors. So
Yeah,
we get better at throwing out the stuff that doesn't necessarily matter, and we get better at putting all the stuff that we got in our head together and finding the path
yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
between them all. What's your favorite part about coaching? Like you've done this for a long time, you're still doing it,
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
it. What's the best part for you?
Um, so again, just to bring it to me, um, so I know, and it piggybacks off what you just said, is that I find that learning curve from 20% to 80% absolutely exhilarating.
Mm.
Um, and I think the thing about coaching is that you get to witness that a lot. So the thing that I love about coaching is seeing someone on that hockey stick um, growth curve. Um, I've done a lot of work with athletes right at the top end, but I must admit I don't find that quite as interesting or as exhilarating trying to eke out that last percent as I do people that are on on a bigger growth curve. We need people that are good at that 1%. It's just not the way I'm wired. Uh,
Mm.
so yeah, I think that trajectory of growth um, and feeling like in some small way you've impacted someone else's life. I think that's my favorite bit.
That's fascinating. Um, yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's for me, I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah,
I'm really, really interested in that last 0.5%,
yeah,
but not for me as a learner. Like for me as a learner, I'm fascinated by that 20 to 80, that hockey stick.
yes,
Like I just want to learn as much as I can and as quickly as I can about this thing.
yes,
And then when I get to 80%, okay, I know enough about this now.
yeah,
Let me
yeah,
go find a new thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Actually, in my coaching, I'm about the 99.8% up. Like that's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really fascinates me. And because I find that the hardest. I don't know if
Oh,
it's the
no
hardest,
question.
but I find it the hardest.
Yeah, yeah, no, no. So I think that is the hardest.
Yeah.
That's it's a last mile problem.
Yeah, I'm continually asking myself whether I still find joy in that.
Mm,
That is still serving me.
yeah,
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes, man, this is so hard. Like really, like do I have to be working this hard for this little piece that
yeah,
really doesn't matter?
yeah,
Maybe it does for this one person or these six people or whatever. But can we have a greater impact or a greater effect on more people? if I didn't care as much about that?
Yeah. Well, so I think the thing that happened for me was, and this might be a bit of retrospective coherence, but I think when Matilda was born, so 7 years ago, 7 years and 4 days ago, so I'd spent my whole career about winning on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think I was pretty good at it, and it was definitely very good for me. But I think something happened when she was born that bit started to matter less to me. And what I became much more animated by was this notion of being a good ancestor.
Hmm.
And a good ancestor, not just to her, and to her little brother now, but to just trying to help be part of a system which makes sport a better place. So that's why I do a lot of work in women in high performance coaching. Those sorts of things, because I want my kids to grow up in a world where it's more equitable. It doesn't matter what you are, you can be a coach. And so that's I kind of mean ancestor in a literal but also a figurative term. And that's the stuff that actually drives me. I think what I found was when I was trying to eke out that last 1%, um, I would always be looking for within that 1%, where was the greatest room for improvement? And I would focus on that, which is, it's hardly rocket science. But that might be, for example, when you've got an elite athlete, and you're trying to go from 97 to 98%. In that 1%, there might be huge room for growth in biomechanics, or it might be room for growth in sleep hygiene or whatever. And so I would focus on that. So that would still give me that little hockey stick. It's just a
Mhm.
smaller hockey stick.
Love that. It's so Matilda being born just kind of force you to almost zoom out a little bit. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's, as I say, aligning things through the rearview mirror, but it kind of makes sense to me
Mm.
that was a catalytic event for me, I suspect. Um, or it may have been just that lifted the curtain on things that were happening in the background beforehand. I'm not too sure. Um, but I think it was instrumental, yeah.
Take David Joyce from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Would that person have been interested in doing corporate consulting or corporate coaching or coaching general population people or doing some of the work that you're doing now?
Hmm. Definitely not general pop.
Yeah.
Definitely not. And I don't know if that's still what animates me.
Hmm.
Now, look, I
But you are
think
working with non-athletes now. That's
I'm
that's
working. Yeah, 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 yeah.
by
But
definition Gen
yeah, yeah.
Pop.
Um, yes, yeah. I'm still looking for high performers though.
Got it.
Like I can't work with just um mean performers, like average. Like that's we need people, because there's a whole heap more people in the middle of the bell curve. I'm just not wired to work best with them. Um, so I'm still a far end of the bell curve sort of guy. But would I have been attracted to outside of sport? Look, I think so. Maybe not 20 years ago, Stu, but I'd been looking at doing my MBA. I remember going to MBA open nights maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So there was
Yeah.
there was something still, like I've always wanted to understand the world a little bit more. Like I'm not a depth guy. I'm as deep as a puddle, Stu. I'm much more of a breadth guy. And I like what I think my gift is being able to shine light in dimly lit corners, and actually be able to draw lessons from disparate fields and then shine a new light onto something.
Mhm.
Um, and I sort of I've looked to other areas outside of sport. So yeah, I definitely would have been, but maybe not 20 years ago, but definitely 15, I reckon.
Hmm. I think you're deeper than a puddle, mate.
Yeah, just maybe.
It's funny when I asked Sean Muldoon, who organized our speed summit, what he does. That's what he said. I coach high performers, and
Yeah, right.
very similar to you. He's not that fussed whether it's high performance in sport or high performance in business or high performance in whatever. It's just that's what he's really interested in.
Well, sport's the vehicle, I think. Sport's the vehicle to be the way of someone expressing themselves. But in the same way that architecture or music or being a surgeon is just another vehicle of being the best version of yourself. And
Hmm.
really what I want to do is help people be the best version of themselves.
And you feel like much of the abilities, the skills, the traits that you develop over the course of your coaching career in sport transfer over into a more of a generalizable.
Well, so this is where the knowledge, capabilities, experiences, and personal qualities framework comes in useful because my knowledge of architecture is pedestrian at best. Um, but when I'm coaching people, that's not the main thing.
Mm.
But my experiences and my capabilities are 100% transferable. I think we get stuck on that knowledge bit and going, I can't coach that person because I don't know enough about counter espionage. That's
Can,
not
can,
what,
so can you give me an example of how something may transfer over? Like what would a typical conversation go like with you and one of your
yeah. So, early days when I'm just starting working with someone, there's a little bit of content to get through. So we do a lot about adaptive leadership, a lot about um, navigating complexity, um, negotiation, um, communicating for impact, those sorts of things. Now, tell me what part of that you don't use every day in your coaching practice.
none of that so far. I
Yeah,
use all of that. Yes.
all of it. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Um, and so the
Are
notion,
they not getting this anywhere else? Like, is
uh,
this like when they're learning to be X? Maybe they're not. Maybe I'm just totally naive here and I don't know how people learn to do these things. I guess maybe they're not.
well, typically we get taught through the lens of technical specialization.
Yeah.
And like you become CFO because you're really good at accounting.
Right.
But the job of a CFO is actually strategy and negotiation and people management and conflict resolution and adaptive um, leadership in times of complexity.
Hmm.
And so there are some areas in sport that we are exposed to on a on a frequent and ongoing basis that makes us good at that.
Hmm.
And we get rapid feedback. Um, and because sport occupies such a large space in society's consciousness, at least in the US and Australia and Canada and the UK, um, you know, we're exposed to lots of people wanting to learn more from us, which then means that for clever people like you, you're exposed to learning more from them. Like, your exposure to working with special forces will be so much larger, should you pursue it, than if you were just a CFO from, a healthcare company or something.
Hmm.
So, look, I don't know that that stuff is well taught. It's pretty good in the military, but in vast numbers of other industries, I suspect it's not.
How do you, and this would be from a coaching perspective, coaching education perspective, and then now working with high performers in corporate world. You've got a certain experience, level of experience, a lot of wisdom. We're sort of joking a little bit about this back in Chicago as well as prior to pressing record here.
Yeah.
You're a wise cat. You really are. And how do you get all of this stuff that's in your brain and communicate it in a way in which somebody who just doesn't have anywhere near that stuff put together yet, like say a 25-year-old, whether it's a business executive or
Mm.
a coach that's just starting out, I struggle with that. Like I'm really interested in the things that I'm interested in
Yeah.
now, and that's the stuff I want to talk about. That isn't the stuff that's relevant to a 25-year-old
No.
coach. So for me to put myself in the brain of this 25-year-old coach is hard for me. I get this a lot, right? He overcomplexifies stuff, or it's above his head, above our head, and blah blah blah. It's really really hard for me to simplify the message in a way
Mm.
that's going to make better sense to the people who haven't had the 20 or 30 or 40 years experience that I do. How do you navigate those challenges?
Well, so the things that I find complex will be different to what a 25-year-old might find as complex. But the the mindset and the way of thinking through complexity will be quite similar. The topic will be different, but the way you navigate it will be quite similar. So I tend to put myself in those shoes and get empathy for that, just because I don't think that their problem is particularly complex, doesn't mean that they don't.
Right.
So I think that's the link. That's the transferability of it. Um, yeah, so I would probably approach it through in that way. But my coaching practice, with whether it is with high performers in the executive space or in sport, and still, and I do most of my work is actually strategy work. Um, you're just asking questions and getting them to articulate and frame what they're really struggling with. Um, and it's less about didactic advice giving, and it's much more about curiosity and getting them to look through the problem slightly differently. And the best analogy I can give is, when you go into a change room, in a department store or whatever, you're trying on a new shirt or whatever, and those change rooms that have got a mirror straight in front of you, but mirrors on the side as well. Have you ever had the experience where you just kind of get in your peripheral vision, you kind of get a glimpse of what you look like from side on, and you go, shit, is that what I actually look like? Um, so my job as a coach is not to be that front on mirror, but to be slightly obliquely positioned to give someone a look at themselves and their situation from a slightly different perspective.
Hmm.
So my dad always used to say, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. It's a very old saying. I think that's what the great coaches do. Um, and I suspect that that's exactly what you do. And so it doesn't really matter that I, I think that the issue that they're dealing with is easy, or um, I've never had to deal with this particular problem that a 25-year-old is having to deal with. Um, Good coaches can ask questions that reveals something to the person they're trying to coach
Hmm.
without it being the answer.
Love it. You said that most of your work now is in strategy and strategic. Talk to me more about that. What do you mean? What do you mean there?
Yeah, so I reckon the split is probably um, 60 strategy, um, 20 coaching, and 20 other stuff like
Hmm.
facilitation and things. Um, so I get called in to do organizational reviews of big sporty organizations that, we didn't win as many games as we needed to. Tell us, I want you to conduct a review. We're having too many injuries. We don't know if our performance team's up standard, all those sorts of things, down to we're losing money here, we need an external pair of eyes, or whatever it is, and that can be in sport and outside of sport.
Mhm.
And then working with that organization to embed some change, so change management. So I still put that as strategy stuff. Um, so that's what it looks like. That's probably half sport, half outside of sport.
Mm.
So, and that gives me my fix really of sport stuff. So I'm not trackside as much anymore. So the things which fill my sporting cup, which is still very thirsty, can cups be thirsty? My cup can be. Um, is the strategy stuff and the strategy with sporting teams and the coaching of coaches. That's the stuff that gives me um that floats my boat. The only problem with that is that it doesn't give me free running kit like it used to. So I'm faced with a situation now, Stu, where um
No.
I'm having to buy trainers
Oh no.
and like I
Hey,
I go into anaphylaxis about it.
it's over when you've done that.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah. I think what was probably there's probably a gap here where you're not getting the free kit anymore, but you're going to become so huge and you're going to be an influencer, and then everybody's going to be just giving you free stuff.
Yeah,
Every
look,
week, every
I
week
suspect
you'll have a new
that's
pair
not.
of running shoes and a new supplement and a new hat.
I suspect that's not true. But it would be lovely if it was.
You're just in the gap, mate. You're just in the gap. Do you how much do you miss actually getting out on the field and coaching? And
Uh,
do you do any of that now or no? Or that's
no, a little bit, but not much.
not much.
And if I'm completely honest, Stu, I don't really miss it too much.
Hmm.
Um, I've done a lot of work in looking at successful retirees. So I've looked at this in sport. I've looked at this in military, pilots, um, and professional services lawyers and the like.
Mhm.
And you will have seen this yourself. There will be people that successfully retire and there'll be people that unsuccessfully retire. And those that successfully retire um, have managed to have an identity which is outside of just them being a pilot. They've got other facets to their life. Um, and rather than retiring out of something, they retire into something.
Yeah.
And I think that the reality is for me that I didn't retire out of sport, I retired into something. And that's probably why I don't miss it as much as what I had initially feared. Um, and that's not to disrespect past Dave, Joycey who had the whistle around his neck. It's just that I've got this new facet of my life, which still floats my boat in the sporting world, but just gives me new problems to solve. So I don't spend too much time sort of missing things.
Do you miss the physical part of that? Like being out and being on your feet and jogging around, running around and moving and being around
Yeah,
other people. And I feel like that's the thing that I would miss the most.
yeah. So I still get that though, like because
It is.
I'm a physical person. Like I get out a lot.
Mm.
Um, I then unquestionably I spend more time behind my desk now than what I used to. Um, but I have to be outside. I'm a mover.
Yeah.
So and I miss the banter a little bit, but that's I don't miss not being able to plan holidays when I want them and not just in off season. I don't miss, you know, not being able to go to the kids' birthday parties because we've got an away trip somewhere. So there's trade-offs. I think I've made the right trade-off with that.
Good for you, mate. Um, why did you write a book? Or why did you start the first book? Because I know you didn't write the entire book, but you wrote
Hmm.
wrote quite a bit of it, and then obviously it was it probably would have been easier for you just to write the entire book rather than having to shuffle a
Yeah,
20 authors together or however many what it was.
yeah. I've thought a little bit about this. I suspect there are a few answers to this. One is I thought there was a need, because there's no shortage of books out there, and this was back, oh God, when was this? 2010 was the very first one.
Was it that
Uh,
long ago?
yeah. And there was a need for a style of book like this, which was a textbook, but not, it was more of a series of master classes. And I really wanted to get a sense from the world's great coaches about the way they did things rather than the world's great academics.
Hmm.
Um, and I was on a journey of understanding that all myself. And my co-editor Dan Lewandon, who's now very senior at City Football Group, so Manchester City Group,
Mhm.
um, we just recognised that we could have all these conversations, but actually there was the scope to scale it. So I think that was like that's the rational part of it, I reckon. Um, Transparently, I thought it was probably a good way for me to get a bit of um, exposure,
Hmm.
if I'm completely honest. And there's no doubt that it was good like that. And I don't have many talents, but I'm a good writer.
Hmm.
And I find comfort in writing. It helps me clarify. Some people think and then write. I write and it helps me think.
Do you have a vehicle or a place in which you write now? Do you have a Substack or a blog?
Yeah, no, so I don't. And it's probably something that I do need to look at because um, it does help me think. I still do write a lot, but it will be, when I'm doing a review of something, and I get asked to do, thought leadership stuff in sports still, and that gives me my fix for now.
Yep.
Um, so I think all of those things are true. Like there was a bit of exposure for me and getting to network with people. There was a little, and naively, maybe I thought there was a little bit of money in it, but the reality is it's like after tax, it's about 16 cents per copy sold. Um, but that all said, it has opened doors for me. I've spoken at conferences in Brazil and Poland and places that I probably wouldn't have been able to.
Mhm.
Um, and it's something I'm immensely proud of. Like we've done three now, and I'm immensely proud of all of them. And it enabled me to connect with you, for example.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Like one of my life sayings, Stu, is you always meet people twice. And the first time you and I met was through the book, and the second time was in Chicago last week. And um, I don't know, and I hope I'm right in this, but I suspect that we'll continue to meet around the planet over the next 50 years or whatever it is. So I think that bit was really important to me as well.
May I hope so.
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It was really good to meet you in Chicago, and it's I know as I said we kind of joked about it a little bit, but I really enjoyed hearing from you. We had most of our conversations through the writing of the chapter that I put together with JB Moran for your book, where
Yeah,
we're over email, and we jumped on a couple of calls, and we've been on a couple of calls since. But it's I was not privy, to my buddy Matt, our good buddy Matt Jordan, who you know a lot better and who knows you a lot better than I do. Um, his I said to him later, I said, man, David's really sharp guy. Like I really like this cat. So it was really good to finally meet you the second time.
yeah.
Yeah, I really look forward to meeting you a lot more often. It was that for me was the highlight of the summit was that last sort of 90-minute conversation with
It
the
was great, wasn't it?
you guys up on the stage there. I thought that was really good. And I thought you brought a lot to that. And I feel like for the 150 people that stayed around for that,
Mm.
I think that was really valuable for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were just talking about this off air as well. I think me being out of trackside full time now has just enabled me to um, just to see things through a different lens. And I think I don't know that I brought any wisdom, but maybe I just brought a different perspective to the conversations. Because sport, whether we like it or not, is still a bit of an echo chamber, and the real value that I find being out of that echo chamber is that I just hear and see things through different lenses. But because I'm still part of that fabric, I can bring them in and maybe provide that oblique mirror that I was talking about 5 minutes ago in the change room. I think that's something that I can provide.
Joyce, yeah, I appreciate you, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Stu. It was great to see you in Chicago, and I've really enjoyed this conversation too. You asked questions that I've never been asked before, and made me think. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you,
Good man.
man. Well, what a great conversation that was with the great man, Dave Joyce. Lots of valuable perspective about not coaching in sport, or at least not the X's and O's of coaching in sport, as most of these podcasts are not, right? Most of them we try to zoom out. And for him now, who spends 80% of his time not coaching athletes, not even coaching coaches, but coaching high performers in other realms. I thought it was really interesting. So I really tried to dig down and learn a little bit more about that because it's something that maybe you'll have heard that I don't know a lot about it, And in fact, off air, he told me, you'd be really good at this. I said, I don't know about that. Like I really feel like I'd struggle with it, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's maybe something that's in my future or not, but who knows? I thought it was a great conversation. So thanks again to Dave. Thank you all for being here. Thanks again, once again, for tuning in to the ALTIS Speed podcast, Speed Summit podcast. Special thanks to all of our great sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, Team Builder, and Output Sports for all of their support. And stay tuned. We will have this video thing, whatever it is. We still haven't quite decided what that's going to look like, but we're putting together something. If you weren't able to come to Chicago, we'll have something. We'll get you covered. We'll probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 hours of incredibly rich content from this amazing event. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.